thank the University of Minnesota. What a university. Thank you. This is such a great institution. They would invite Michael Moore, and now they would invite Ron Paul and Michele Bachmann. Now that's an exemplar of diversity. I thank the University of Minnesota. Like you, I highly value our featured speaker tonight, Congressman Ron Paul. And I have known Ron for the 3 years that I have been in Congress. I've been just honored to know him, to get to know him better, to have conversations with him. He's invited me to be a part of his Thursday Liberty Luncheon. Every week we get together, we talk about monetary policy, and the foundation of all of our conversations is liberty and how we can get more liberty back into the hands of the people. He truly is who he says he is. He's an awesome man, and you're going to enjoy hearing what he has to say this evening. I know that you're not only going to be inspired by Ron Paul's remarks, but he is also, for the very first time, having this meeting going out on live stream over the internet tonight, and he's holding his very first town hall on monetary policy. So we're happy he chose our state to do that. As you heard earlier this evening, today Ron Paul achieved a 26-year dream. It was in Financial Services Committee, the committee that I'm privileged to sit on. Congress held a hearing today on his bill to audit the Federal Reserve. Signatures out of 435 members of Congress. I would say that's a majority. I was there today in committee with Ron, and I was able to ask questions of the witnesses before the committee. Now, why is it so important for us to know about the Federal Reserve? As our second witness, Thomas Woods said, and if you haven't read his book, Meltdown, you need to read his book. He said that the Fed, as a private organization, enjoys something that no other organization has. They have a government-granted monopoly on the right to create legal tender or money, which means they literally have a license to print money. Now that's a pretty valuable asset. And yet since 1913, this organization has been shrouded in secrecy and has never had the curtain pulled back for the American people to know the inner workings until today. The Federal Reserve to print whatever money was needed to fund the federal government's run-up of debts. And the Fed is supposed to be about full employment. And though unemployment is now 9.7%, experts are actually telling us that it's upwards of 16 to 20%. And the Federal Reserve is supposed to be about price stability. Yet look at the value of houses and the fall in that value, or last year's dramatic increase in the price of energy. The Federal Reserve is supposed to stabilize the value of the dollar and prices, but that's the biggest problem of all. As Ron Paul said today in our committee, a dollar was worth $1 in 1913, and today that same dollar is worth 4 cents. 4 cents. How did our dollar lose 96% of its value if the Federal Reserve was supposed to be stabilizing the value of that dollar, and that was their chief duty? Maybe it's because they had a license to print money. In light of all this, the Federal Reserve even wants more power and more secrecy, and Congress is hell-bent to give them more power. The power to regulate America's financial system. Now think about this. They have the monopoly to print money. They also are going to have the power to regulate the financial system. The Federal Reserve needs a bright light and transparency. It doesn't need any more secrecy. $700 billion bailout? Well, that's how Ron Paul and I got really acquainted. We voted no on every bailout, on every stimulus, on every... That $700 billion is what everyone heard about. But what a lot of people didn't hear about, it was in the media, but it wasn't trumped up. A lot of people didn't hear about the fact that the Federal Reserve on its own took on literally trillions of dollars in obligations, but we don't have any clue who received the loans, or in what amounts, or what the collateral was, or what the loans were made for. Trillions of dollars. The first money that Secretary Paulson sent out the door was to foreign banks. The first billions went to the Deutsche Bank and to the Bank of France. But the federal government, the Federal Reserve, doesn't want Congress involved in any foreign lending activity. We're supposed to keep our fingers out of it. But we have to know about this. And you have to know about this because the Federal Reserve should be about protecting the soundness of our dollar, not inflating it and not destroying it. And most assuredly, the Federal Reserve should not be a government unto itself. But why should you care? Why should you even care about this? Because you are the generation that will inherit spending-induced debt load unlike any previous generation in the history of this great country has inherited. From the Revolutionary War until the present, our government has spent $6.4 trillion on wars. Since 1965 and the creation of the modern welfare state, our government has spent $15.9 trillion, almost $16 trillion on welfare. 5 years from now, our government will be spending $1 trillion a year on welfare. Now let me just give you an explanation. After a while, a million, a billion, a trillion, what does it all mean? If you take 1,000,000 seconds, that adds up to 11 and a half days. If you take 1 billion seconds, that ends up to 32 years. If you take 1 trillion seconds, that's 32,000 years. We're talking about a lot of money here. So this year, Congress is going to increase federal spending. They've already made this decision. They're increasing federal spending this year 22%, while the private economy has been contracting. Where is the federal government going to get that money? The private economy is contracting, and they're on a party. They're spending 22% more. Next year, Congress has already decided they're going to increase welfare spending 33% in 1 year's time. Next year, government is going to spend more on welfare in 1 year. This is just one example of how government is spending our money. Next year, government is going to spend more money on welfare in 1 year than they spent on the entire 8 years of the war. Just to let you know how out of control all of this spending is. And these amounts don't even include the $43 trillion and counting in unfunded liabilities that we're on the hook for Social Security, Medicare, and Medicare Part D. But there's a lot of college students here tonight. And for college-age students, some experts have estimated that the burden that you're about to bear in your peak earning years, you may be taxed 25% of your paycheck just to satisfy the demands for Social Security. You may be taxed more than 25% of your income just to satisfy the demands for Medicare. That doesn't include the percentage you'll be taxed to provide for Medicare Part D, and then also your federal income tax portion, then your state tax portion, your property tax portion, sales tax, gas tax, every time you turn around tax. In other words, at the rate your government is spending, the fruits of your labor have already been spoken for, and government has first dibs on you. How did this happen? How did it happen? What was your grandparents' tax rate? Back in 1950, a family of four earning the median income paid 2% of their income in taxes to the federal government. What was your parents' tax rate? In 1995, your parents paid 25% of their income to the federal government. But by 2050, when you're in your prime earning years and approaching retirement, the marginal tax rate on the average family will be, get this, 53% or more. But then add on Medicare, Medicare Part D, Social Security, state and local taxes. That's before the government takeover of health care is being debated in Congress today. In other words, 100% of your check has already been spoken for. How do you like them apples? You can't have everything that you made confiscated by government. It doesn't work. And the fear is this, that in order to pay off these debts, the Federal Reserve will be printing worthless money and inflating the money supply and debasing the value of our dollar. Because inflation is our cruelest tax of all. And all because Congress, the President, the judiciary, they've all failed. They've all failed to follow the limits on the jurisdiction that was enumerated in the Constitution of the United States. Article 1, Section 8 limits the power of the United States Congress, and Congress has blown through its limitations. Crisis on our hands, perhaps as soon as 8 years from now, experts warn. And your generation is left holding the bag, and it's not a pretty sight. Unless Congress acts immediately to stop the out-of-control spending, stop the devaluation of our dollar, stop the incessant foreign borrowing, and stop printing worthless money. Like China and Japan will insist on replacing the American dollar with a new international one-world currency. You've already heard about this from China, Brazil, South America, now the United Nations. That means reducing demand for the American dollar, and then we're left with a dollar that's worth very, very little. We can do better than this. I care about you, and I care about your generation. And we don't have to have the movie end this way. We can change it, because you deserve freedom too. Someone for whom I have great respect and great esteem, and someone that I have enjoyed getting to know in Washington. Congressman Ron Paul is one of the leading advocates of freedom in our nation's capital. He's worked tirelessly, as you know, for constitutional government, for low taxes, for free markets, and the topic we're here to discuss tonight, sound monetary policy.